And we're good.
We're live?
Yes, we are live.
Nice. We're
You know,
alive, not frozen.
I've always been afraid of going live and then you're not live the entire time, or like you're recording your podcast like you've done, and it's
Like
like
I've done.
and it's like you forget to record, and then you're like, oh my gosh, what did I
I
just
know,
do
right?
for 4 hours?
Yeah.
It's tough.
It's terrible, man.
So as we're letting folks come on this beautiful Thursday afternoon, I think, let's see, are you still, I've seen several episodes of your podcast, are you still typically putting those out on Mondays?
I typically do, yeah. I had like a little bit of I interrupted my flow, but I generally like to put my podcast on Mondays.
How do you feel talking to so many different people at this point? You've had a lot of people on, I feel like, at this point.
You know what? I feel like I don't have nearly enough. Like, I enjoy talking to you. I enjoy talking to everyone. You know, I miss Dante, actually. He's doing a lot of things now, like work-related, so he couldn't join. I really honestly want to expand. Like, I think one of my latest new acquaintances was Meg. You know, it's like she started coming over. She really enjoys doing that as much as I. But I really want to, like, pull outside of just YouTube and somebody who's also like either an influencer or creator that does figurines. Like, you've seen the one that I did with this figurines, right, with Darth Vader.
Yep.
It's something like that, man.
You have, hey Sean, hey Nick, happy Thursday. I think one that sticks out to me as kind of a unique one was your book collection one.
Yeah.
That was an interesting topic. You know, it's like there's so many different parts of the Star Wars the culture, right? The greater culture. And part of that is like the joy of collecting, which you can see I've begun dabbling in more and more. So we have all my Star Wars hats behind me. You know, we have our Darksaber, we have some of our High Republic books, we have Lego going on. We have
I enjoy seeing the evolution of it, like how you get the Darksaber, right? And it's in the video, and then behind you on the shelf. That's really cool.
And it's crazy. So my most for fans who've been around for a while, this display video, one of the first like major videos, hey J Charge, that I did on the channel. And when I filmed it on my iPhone. Something messed up with my color grading. If you watch it, you'll know it's pretty gray wash. I don't really know why it did that, but you know, I spent all the time doing it, and I hung it up, and I didn't realize until I uploaded it to my computer it was having those issues. So I was like, wait, no, I'll just upload it. You know, what does it hurt? I put that time into it. You know, I'm sure fans want to see it because I found no reviews on the XLs, which are 4 sections.
Yeah,
that is my most viewed video on the channel to this day. It gets about. I mean, it cracks me up. You know, one video you think you're just gonna make and no one's gonna watch it. You know, it's absolutely crazy. Yes, King of Cringe, we're going to talk about doing this stream. Absolutely. It's going to be probably story number 2. I would say we're going to start off with the big one because I want to wait a second to get folks in here because the big story broke literally like the next day after our stream. And I was like, man, we missed it by a day because there was a huge, I think, unexpected announcement. Let's get into some of the smaller ones. Let me start the process here.
Lead the way.
Man, I know we say it every week, but it just feels later and later every week. You know, it's like, oh my goodness, here we go.
Yeah.
It is getting dark, and we are coming at you with the first kind of fun little item that caught my eye. We're getting some Visions figures, guys.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
This is cool. So, it looks to me like they're going to be very much in the statue style, which I like as I've gotten older, and you know, most of my figure usage, you guys can see your display. You can see I have like the Funko Pops down at the bottom. Something like this on my shelf would be really fun. And I'm curious to see if there's only the only 3 we get. So we have the twins, which I think are really interesting pick because I'm not sure that was as big a favorite as like the Duel, the Ninth Jedi, and even the Village Bride. I definitely think this was a good one, just not as big. I'm not surprised at all with the Duel. They really seem to be leaning into the Duel universe. It's got its own book with Ronin. It's got its own figures. It seems to be getting the most love right now.
It feels like it was deliberately a flagship for the series. You know, they showed a lot of it in the trailer. They showed the samurai. It's like, hey guys, it almost meant to communicate what the premise of Visions is. It's like the play on the Japanese culture.
So, hey Blue Pig. So, Ronin. I am a couple chapters in. I have not been able to read very much this week, unfortunately. It's just been crazy busy. Have you even started yet? Have you checked out Ronin?
No, I'm being a lazy bum, to be honest with you. I'm just like chugging through my X-Wing series. I'm kind of like on and off with the reading right now. I have like these episodes where I would do nothing but just read books, right?
Yeah.
And I'll jump to video games and I'll jump to TV show. I'm like binge watching the last season of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now, which is like blowing my mind.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and all this time I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I gotta catch up with High Republic because we gotta talk about this stuff. I gotta catch up with Ronin because we gotta talk about this stuff.
It is weird, and I'm sure the fans in chat feel the same way. It's like when a book comes out, especially that you've been waiting for, you want to like read it right away, but books are different than a show. You can't just binge watch a book, really. I mean, you can, of course you can, but it's not the same experience. You know, there's something different about reading a book. Yeah. And I totally agree with you. I need to catch up on Ronin because I think the start has been really strong. Mm-hmm. Some other kind of fun little rumors that have been floating around before we get into our bigger stories. It looks like, Star Wars stuff, which I wouldn't say is the most reliable. This is not the most reliable source. Not that they're like crap. It's just, it's not like it's like the Hollywood Reporter here. There's a rumor floating around that Andy Serkis has been cast in Andor. I would be very surprised by this, but also at the same time not surprised. Because people hear Andy Serkis and they think like, oh, it's going to be Snoke. But if you know anything about Andy Serkis, he plays a million roles in these...
Snoke.
It could. Right? But think about this. I mean, he does so much motion capture work. So he did, he played Caesar in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He obviously is going to be Alfred in the new Batman. He's obviously was, what's it called? Not Smeagol. No, I guess it was. So, he's in Lord of the Rings. I mean, he does so much motion capture work. And Snoke, that's what they use him for. Maybe it's some other character that requires a lot of motion capture. We'll see. I would be, it's funny because I wouldn't be. He seems to work a lot. He seems to get a lot of work in Hollywood. You know what I mean?
What would you personally, like, based on his resume, right? What would you like to see? Regardless whether, it's most likely to see or not, what would you like to see in Rogue One?
I mean, I got to be honest with you. It's a great question because I know nothing about what to expect from this Andor show. It's been kind of out there as like, oh, it's, the prequel to Rogue One. And Rogue One was a movie I didn't even want until I got it. When I got it, I was like, okay, shoot, I wanted this. Who knew? Mm-hmm. So Andor, I have no idea what the characters could even be like. Like, what could he even play? Is it going to be really grounded in the same way Rogue One felt really grounded? Yeah. And is this going to be kind of like a guerrilla warfare movie where they're out in the trenches fighting the Empire? I don't know. I just don't know what to expect with Andor. How do you feel? Is it on your list of like... Are you excited about it or just wait and see?
The Andor, I'm definitely waiting and seeing because, like you mentioned, when Rogue One came out, what really sold me wasn't the announcement itself, but the trailer was kind of like selling them. Like, oh, wow, it looks visually crazy, right? Yeah. And then we almost exclusively see Andy Serkis credits in, like, he's behind a creature or some kind of wizardry or puppetry. Wasn't he in, I'm trying to remember, was it Civil War that he plays like a quick role? No, Black Panther.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? He plays a Black Panther villain.
Ulysses Claw or whatever, yeah.
Right. I would like to see him as himself on screen, just perform and act. He's an excellent actor, right?
I like that. I like him better out of mocap. Well, he's good at motion capture, no doubt about it. But I think he's really fun. Like, I think he's going to be a great Alfred in the Batman. You guys know I'm a huge Batman fan. I think he's going to be a fun pick, a fun twist on the character.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, fun twist.
Yeah.
So that story, I didn't think it was big enough to really talk about it in a lot of detail, but something I saw floating around this week. We will wait and see. Andor has been so less hype as far as announcements as the other couple shows we're going to talk about.
I almost feel like, I just wanted to quickly mention it, almost feels like they are pursuing the whole hype machine for the Andor almost in exactly the same way they did with Rogue One. It's like, hey, let's keep it hush-hush. Yeah. And then when we have the big guns to show, let's see how honestly people react to it. Because you know what I'm feeling? A lot of the stuff that happens marketing-wise with cinema, like when it really feels like the studio is trying to push it to you and you see the ads on television and everywhere, and the movie flops, so like that marketing goes nowhere. Other times you have something like Rogue One, and it's just this kind of like organic reach and word of mouth kind of thing, and people are like, yeah, dude, man, don't skip on this movie, go see it. Fans start getting hyped about it. It almost feels like they're doing the same with Andor, and I'm all up for it. I'm like, don't shove it in my face, have it ready for me, let me explore it myself, and if it blows my mind, you know what, I'll be the first one on the YouTube shilling for it for Disney,
I'm at first of all, I totally agree that if you have like very few announcements about you just kind of come out with a trailer, it's very easy to surprise people because they're like, oh man, I didn't say anything about the show. This show is awesome. If you're as hype and making as big announcements as some of these other shows, expectations are here now. you got to meet those expectations. Andor's like down here. Andor's got to do very little for me personally, to blow me away. If it's just good and fun, or not even fun, if it's just good and well executed and maybe gritty or whatever they go for, it's got a lot less to impress me as opposed to the big story. The huge resurgence of Hayden Christensen as Anakin in Star Wars. This has been a truly unexpected turn. Okay, I think even him coming back in the Kenobi show surprised me because I was like, they're going to have him play Vader again. And I think I think he's going to be used sparingly. My guess is we're going to see him floating in the tank or maskless in, a meditation chamber style, maybe sparingly throughout the show. Which is fine. I think that's totally fine and very cool that they actually brought back the guy. But this Ahsoka announcement really surprised me. And I had two feelings if you guys watched my video. I was really late to the game, so a lot of people didn't check it out. I had two thoughts. The first thought was, okay, it's going to be a Force Ghost or a flashback, right? It's got to be one of those two things. And either sound really cool. The Force Ghost angle is a little interesting as far as like the context of the larger Star Wars universe. Like, did he ever go see Luke, right? Becomes the natural question. Then you could argue, well, Anakin was technically closer with Ahsoka than Luke. I mean, they had a lot more time together and years together, formative years. Luke, that he only met, really had a handful of time with him, right? It's his son by blood, but, they didn't have maybe the same level of trials and tribulations. So let's start with the first point. I'm thinking flashback. I'm thinking much more likely Force Ghost. How is this going to fit in the show? How are they going to make this work?
I think there's a third option, actually, which I'm surprised with you that people are not talking enough about. With Vader, the way that he first makes his grand appearance on screen, right, in the original Episode 4, it's all about his appearance. It's all about this outer shell. And what makes him interesting in the original trilogy is that inner conflict that you don't hear. But you understand that something is happening. Remember when he extends that green lightsaber in The Return of the Jedi? It's like, you've constructed a new lightsaber. He's saying one thing, but it's so skillfully directed that something is going on there emotionally, right? Obviously, in the prequels, we get him as Anakin who's descending into that. He's slowly protecting himself with his exterior shell, emotionally, right? What if we see him in this show where in both Kenobi as Vader, we get his inner dialogue, right? And they have some kind of like visual cue or excuse to take off that mask, whether let's say he's sitting in his suit and he's still his face, or even as he sees himself still as a human being, and it's like a visual representation of him looking on himself as a human and having those inner thoughts like, man, I really let everybody down. I can't believe I did this to my wife, and so on and so forth. What if it's that option?
I would be, it all kind of hinges upon what their goal for the Ahsoka show is, right? What story are they telling? That really will dictate what we're going to see. I think we're all assuming that the plot point that's been laid, that she's going after Thrawn, is where the show will, begin. Are we going to see some sort of Thrawn Vader interaction from back in the day, and that's where they're going to use him? That would be really interesting, a flashback. That would be really interesting and something I haven't really considered, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. For me, the second reaction I had, I'm very hyped about this. So I mean, big prequels fan, this is amazing to me. Mm-hmm. But like, what if they didn't announce it and it surprised me?
Yeah,
I think they really missed an opportunity to surprise me because we knew he was part of the Obi-Wan show, and if we had have heard he was filming something Star Wars related we'd have been like, oh, it's the Kenobi show that they announced. They already told us that, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think you needed to generate more excitement from Star Wars fans about the Ahsoka show.
Sorry to interrupt. I think it's the financial aspect of it, and honestly, I completely agree with you. It's like, it's so dependent on like sales and viewership, which they can't afford to do it anymore, and it's very unfortunate.
They're doing the same thing. We'll return to the main topic. I feel like they did the same thing with the new Spider-Man, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone knows who's going to be in that movie. I'm not going to say if you haven't figured it out yet. Yeah. But imagine if we didn't know going into the theater. You'd have been like, oh my gosh, is that? Oh, but now it's like we've known for like 3 years. They've been rumored this for. It's like, okay, well now it's an expectation. Well, I got to see this, and it better deliver. right? As opposed to like, oh my gosh. So think the Luke moment in the last season. Now for you, it didn't work, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But no one had any idea that was coming, you know. And I watched the making documentary, which is fascinating when they talk about making the finale and the kind of things they did to keep it secret. And that moment like broke the internet. It broke fans. You know, people were so excited. Maybe it didn't work for everyone at the same level. Everyone, regardless if you loved it or not, was like, "Oh wow, I did not expect that." At least I didn't.
100%.
Yeah. Well, they totally removed that with this Anakin reveal, and I think this Anakin. Now, of course, I'm a prequel era fan. This Anakin reveal to me would have been actually bigger than the Luke one for me for a couple reasons.
Yeah.
We've never really seen this relationship, this Ahsoka-Anakin relationship that we've seen in the Clone Wars, right? We've never even had them on the big screen. It's been impossible anywhere. We've never seen it.
Yeah.
And this would have been our first time seeing that interaction. And it's also going to be the same actor, Hayden Christensen. It's going to be the same person. It's going to be like, and I know it was technically Mark Hamill. I get it. But, you know, we all know Mark Hamill's older than that. So you know he's being de-aged. Like, they could have Hayden Christensen just... He looks young. Have you seen him
he
recently?
Looks awesome.
He doesn't look old. It could very well just be the Hayden Christensen today, and I think we're going to immediately connect with that more. That was my reaction. I'm a little bummed. I know. I'm so excited it's happening, but like you didn't have to tell me. You didn't have to tell me.
I have thoughts here too. You know, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And first of all, I gotta say, you and I we're having this ongoing conversation right on my podcasts about our feelings about the prequel movies. I can't tell you how excited I was about this news because when it was announced for Kenobi, and I think it should have been just it, because when you know they started inviting Hayden Christensen back to celebrations, I'm like, dude, that's the biggest giveaway. That's the signal right there. Way back in like 2018, I was thinking to myself, something is about to happen. They're not bringing him out of blue for celebrations. He's almost like there to be like the poster child for prequels only in 2018. I'm like, oh man, this is the exciting time. And when this announcement happened, to me, it worked twofold. Number one is that we're not going to see just his voice. He's not going to be just cameoed the way he probably will be in Kenobi, because it's a Kenobi show. And the reason I told you that I wasn't so big on Luke Skywalker appearing in the Mandalorian season, because he's being cameoed around. He's like, oh, fans are not happy with this. Let's try this technique here. See if Luke will. And he's really there for just like a few seconds. This is full-blown Hayden Christensen, who I've missed. I remember I told you that I thought he was one of the few things which were great with prequels since day one, since I saw those movies. Yeah. I could not understand like all the fans lashing out and saying his acting is so wooden, choppy. I enjoyed the romance of it. I enjoyed his acting. He was like such a young and promising actor. He did it very well. And now that we get to see his face and his acting and his performance, and it's not just like, hey guys, by the way, we're going to pull little Anakin here just so you could be happy. No, they're centering the show around him. And you know what really makes me hope for? If they missed this opportunity where making this reveal, then keep the next project hush-hush, and she's still very young to portray him against Rosario Dawson in Ahsoka and Anakin standalone show. Let's say it's maybe like 10 episodes long, but have them perform their own show and make it a complete surprise. I think fans will celebrate. I will celebrate it. I can't wait that there is a Clone era content. And as I mentioned on one of my posts on Facebook, I think it's going to be a very bittersweet experience for me, because if Kenobi and this Ahsoka show are significantly better than the prequels, I'll be like, oh man, I wish the prequels were this good. You know, it's going to be a bittersweet experience.
You know, for me, I think about too, the Mandalorian season 2, they announced a lot of big reveals before the show came out. They announced Boba Fett return. They announced Ahsoka casting. So it seemed like let certain announcements leak in order to conceal the other large one, which was Luke's return, right? So maybe they're doing something with that here where it's like, oh, they have a real big reveal up their sleeve, but, you know, they're keeping it hush-hush right now because, you know, they have a bigger one they're trying to hide, so they're going to use Hayden Christensen's casting to kind of overshadow that. That's very possible. But you know what, to be honest with you? I kind of didn't like that they told me Boba Fett and Ahsoka were in Mandalorian Season 2 either. Like, imagine I'm just watching the first episode and all of a sudden there's this dude off in the distance, and I'm like, oh, who is it? They zoom in, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's Boba Fett. You know, like, holy crap, I can't believe they did this.
Yeah.
But we knew, so I had time to prep, and then, not that it's bad. I mean, it's not that, like, it made the episodes worse, but it, to me, is a missed opportunity to really, like, wow.
I thought it was one of the weakest episodes in the show, really. It's just so anticlimactic, like, just the way it's filmed. When you see those, like, troopers running out of those pods, there's complete shots which feel like they were like recorded with camcorder. I'm like, hold on a second, this looks so inconsistent with the rest of the episode. And then there's like this obviously constructed, you know, glory moment where he's like, he's with his, you know, stick, and just he's like kicking everybody around. I'm like, man.
Yeah, so Boba Fett is amazing. Ignore everything you just heard there. He's cool every time you see him on screen. And speaking of which, they are releasing a new Boba Fett collection by Columbia. It's gonna be like jackets and stuff on 12/3. So just you remind me of that announcement that I'm excited for all you folks who like to waste money on Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Hayden Christensen coming back, it's gonna be, I think, good for everyone. I think it's gonna be good for new fans, old fans, to see these characters return.
Yeah.
And,
I'm so happy for him, man. He deserves it. He deserves the spotlight. He deserves like fan adorations. He did for prequel trilogy what Mark Hamill did, you know, for the originals. I'm so happy for him. Like, honestly, I am, man.
I think it's kind of cool that, you know, Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen are both getting like opportunities in an era now where they're viewed as like amazing. Because back then they were viewed as kind of villains. Like, no one didn't like the actors per se, but no one really heralded their movies, right? No one was. The popular consensus was not like, oh, we love these movies. There was a lot of people, unhappy. So they're now actually getting. I mean, imagine how surreal it is to Hayden Christensen that he's now like he's announced and people are like losing their crap, like excited. Yeah. Versus when he was in those movies and people were making fun of him, he's probably like, "Oh, now you want me? Like now you want
exactly right?" It's ironic.
It is. It is funny how it works like that. Yeah. Very exciting. I saw a couple comments I'll call out. You know, Jay Charge said something I think a lot of people agree with, which is he'd love to see the Clone War armor in live action. We've never seen it. We've never really had that on Anakin or on, you know, an Ahsoka, you know, together, right? You've never seen those kind of iconic.
And I hope this time around they don't make a mistake, you know, making clone troopers CG. I really hope like it's real people and the
cool.
armor is real, you know, props.
It'd be really cool if it was a flashback. I could have seen a flashback in the Kenobi show as well with Anakin and Ahsoka. That'd have been really cool. The three of them back in the Clone War era, but neither here nor there. We will see so many. There are some big projects on the way. You know, Book of Boba Fett is fast approaching, December 27th. The Ahsoka series comes out next year as well. Andor comes out. I mean, Star Wars it's going to be and Bad Batch season 2. It's going to be a big year for Star Wars on Disney Plus. It's going to be very big.
Yeah, I almost don't miss the live action movies.
You know, it's funny. I don't either. At this, because we have other content. We have books and other stuff.
That's what I'm saying. It's the format is so appropriate and fun. Like I miss having Star Wars like on a weekly digest. You know.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. I just want to say one thing before we fully go to our next story. I feel like Bad Batch still does not get the respect it deserves. Like I'm rewatching through it, and I'm like, man, people just slept on this season. I think I not that people hated it or anything, but I don't think people had the same level of hype that I think it kind of deserved. I think it was just really well done for a first season.
You know, I think that Filoni was very brave to pursue that line because he counts on the fact that 3 or 4 years from now, when we're like in season 4, it will be looked at differently. And people will understand for the foundation that it laid.
I just think you got to go back and rewatch season 1
and 2. It is so layered,
War.
Man. It's like it's so deep. Like, and he intricately. People say like the characters got no development. Like, what are you talking about? Are you looking at these episodes?
I gotta tell you, you go rewatch season 1 and 2 of Clone Wars. Yeah, I don't know. It does not hold up as well. It does not hold up. It's not as bad. It's just not nearly as good as the first season of the Bad Batch. Yeah. From both technical execution, like the actual scoring is phenomenal. I think the scoring is phenomenal. The visuals are phenomenal. And then I think the actual stories we get are a lot more engaging than some of the weird kind of side missions at the beginning. Regardless, that is Hayden Christensen returning. We are all excited to see it. Star Wars TV seems to be in a good spot. And I think this is how Star Wars handles the new era. I think this is a good place for it. It has seemed to, I mean, I feel like even the misses for some people, like for me, I wasn't a giant fan of Mandalorian season 1. You weren't a giant fan of Mandalorian season 2. I think even the misses aren't as far misses. Like they're closer to the target. Like if they miss, they don't miss like over here. It's kind of like, for me, Mandalorian season 1 was like, well, I wish it had done, like it just felt a little too. If some of the side characters in season 1 I felt were extremely weak. I just really, but regardless, my point
is. But it's also still very watchable. It's like you
exactly
have fun with it. You put it on. It's like, okay, let's put a critic over here and just have fun.
Exactly. So that is the big story that launched last Friday. You know what's interesting about that story? That happened last Friday when I was on my way to the theater to see Dune. Now you might be saying, Josh, isn't this a Star Wars channel? Why are we talking about Dune? Well, for a couple reasons. Number one, I want to talk about Dune, and you guys are my friends in my audience, and
that's the best reason.
That's what I'm going to talk about. Number two, I think Dune, and I saw a lot of discourse with this on Twitter about Dune and Star Wars. And I think it's fascinating because I went into, now let's just lay the groundwork. I have never read Dune. I have never seen the 1980s Dune. I had never touched Dune, a Dune property. I didn't read a synopsis. I only saw the trailers. I went in to see the movie. I wanted to go in just bare. And Timeline has read the book. Right. Have you seen the 80s film?
Yeah, I actually grew up with the 80s film as a kid in Russia. The funny thing is I remembered it vaguely back then because the most striking thing was the kid with the blue eyes and the worms, obviously, the scary parts. Yeah. And obviously when I came here, I was like a teenager in my early 20s. I got, the DVD and all that stuff, and I saw it again.
So Blue Pig said no spoilers, and I will keep it light on spoilers. It only came out a week ago, so I'm not gonna go.
Everyone dies, okay?
Yeah. There you go. I gotta be honest with you. I went to this movie very excited. My hype level was high, so this had, it wasn't like I came in like, low expectations. I came in very excited for this, and I was actually I was blown away. This is one of my favorite sci-fi movies I've seen in years. And frankly, one of the best theater experiences I've probably had since Endgame. And even then, I think Infinity War was far superior to Endgame. And the reason Endgame and Infinity War are up there is the magnitude of story. It was so long in the making. It was 10 years of our lives, right? I mean, when that story came out, when the Infinity Saga started, you're talking about someone who was in, I was in like middle school. I don't remember how old I was. It was, 10 years of my life. So I grew up with those characters. That was why those were so momentous.
Yeah.
But for a movie like Dune, a property that I have no experience with, to come out and be one of the best theater movies I've seen in 4 or 5 years, I think is a testament to how well executed it is. Now, I will say, before I pass it over to you, because I want to give first thoughts and then go deeper. I saw a lot of people on Twitter, and I've heard some in my personal conversations, who this movie wasn't for them. I do think there's a group of people who will not like this movie. Yeah. Not because it's bad. I just think not every movie is for every person. Not every restaurant's for everyone. Not every drink is for everyone. We all have tastes, and this movie to some people, I think, is not going to check their boxes of a good time. But to me, I think it absolutely nailed everything I could possibly want. I was retweeting and liking everything related to when were they going to announce a sequel, and it seems we have that confirmation because I can't imagine not getting that sequel. So for you, a fan who has more context, who has more history, saw this in theaters last weekend, what are your thoughts now a couple days, you've had time to digest?
Before I give you unwrap, my impression of it and just put it on you and we discuss, I gotta say that for me always there has been two kinds of films, right? And it has to do with being a child who is, of two cultures. I was raised in Russia until I was 14 years old, and I came here, and I was introduced to a lot of European movies, Asian movies, and so forth, right? And there's this distinct fine line between art cinema and Hollywood. Neither one is better than the other. We also, as Russian kids, grew up with the Indiana Jones movie, Back to the Future, all these classic blockbuster movies, right? They're just very, very different thematically and just philosophically. Dune falls into category, and I think this is what everybody's celebrating, right? I 100% agree with you. It's not going to be for everyone because the director did not shoot it to be a crowd pleaser. This is a rare example of an art film or how do you call it? Independent film,
Indie
or film
film,
noir,
yeah.
or Criterion Collection sort of film with a blockbuster budget. And it's a rare moment where a director is given the green light to shoot something like this. And just like yourself, I was completely blown away. So I went into the theaters after reading the book, but also after working for 12 plus years in a comic book shop. I said, look, all these conversations about how fans want perfect adaptations from source material onto the big screen, I'm not with that. I don't want a perfect replica of the story that I already know, whether it's a comic book or a novel. Give me your fresh input, give me your unique voice, but be respectful to the source materials. One perfect example of it is the first X-Men First Class, which knows the source material, but plays around with the elements so expertly, you know you're watching an X-Men show, an X-Men movie, because it's not about their powers, what they look like, or somebody has a white highlight here. It's the heart of it. What's the whole thing is about. And when I started watching the Dune, I guess we'll go deeper into it. You'll ask me more questions. Yeah. Is from start to finish, it's the combination of visuals and sound, and it's just interfacing with the big screen and the full crowd behind you. Here in IMAX on 42nd Street, when I saw it, the theater was literally packed. There wasn't an empty seat. No. It was just, the movie takes you on a journey where you don't feel like you're watching something cool, like you're watching a spectacle of 25,000 superheroes flying across the screen. You're going on a journey. And this is what I wanted out of this movie. I wanted focus and emphasis on something that evokes an emotion. It delivered 110%.
Two things, because you've hit some points I wanted to address. First of all, to Chad, hey Nate, but also to King of Cringe. This I will retweet on my Twitter. This was on SG Posters, this artwork. It's going to be a really cool wallpaper for your phone if you want to do this. I had this pulled out. That was really sweet. Cool art.
I like it.
And I don't even have I think it looks phenomenal down here with the with Arrakis in the middle, and it's just with Caladan on the sides. It's very cool. Anyway, wanted to call that out. You hit the nail on the head on a couple things, and I will kind of feed off you. First of all, from a technical perspective, not story, not acting, let's just talk about film, cinematography, scoring. This is about as good as you're going to get for a big blockbuster movie. The only, and I say this very, very, like, if I was going to nitpick, if I was going to be like, what is not perfect? Why is it not a perfect technical movie? Hans Zimmer, who is the best, in my opinion, I listen to Hans Zimmer scores on repeat. The Man of Steel theme to me is a masterpiece. Literally, I use some of those songs from Hans Zimmer in my wedding. You're talking to a Hans Zimmer like super fan here. Mm-hmm. Adore him. I think he overdid the score a little bit. There were sometimes I think he could have been more subtle in delivery, where like the scenes were big enough, the moments were big enough, and his music was also there, and it was like, okay, you could have probably toned out. And that is not saying it wasn't a good score. It was a very good score, but it wasn't to me like perfect. So that's the only like half point I take away. If you gave me like, what's the technical score of Dune? It's 9.5 out of 10. Like 9.5 out of 10 for me. It's like 0.5. I think the score could have been a little bit more tuned. Mm-hmm. For preference, it's my preference. I'm not even saying, it's just my preference.
How dare you to have a preference?
Yeah. So to me, it was absolutely phenomenal on a technical level, like you've kind of spoken to. Cinematography, shots, CGI. You're not going to get much better CGI here, man. I mean, I'm serious.
Everything feels so tactile and lived in, right? And very, very Star Wars 1977, where like George introduced this visual language, right? That people have used all this stuff. I couldn't point, aside from Paul Atreides' like little face, you guys see it in the trailer, it's not a spoiler.
Agreed.
Everything, like you can't point to a single thing and say, oh, that's probably fake, that's probably CGI.
The one scene from the trailer where the helmet comes up,
it's
the
only
bad
have
CGI.
Seen it all,
it's in the trailer. It's the only bad CGI. And I almost feel like that was even intentional, given what the scene was. It almost felt like they were trying to do something there. Anyway,
perhaps.
It could have been done better, but that's like the only. But... Yeah, exactly. It's the only scene to me that was not absolutely phenomenal, and it was still fine. It wasn't like it was just like there's a couple. You're talking like 0.2 of a point of not being perfect.
Yeah.
Because there'll never be a perfect movie, right? This doesn't exist. From what you talked about, it's an indie film. What is so fascinating though about it being like an independent film? If you took the average moviegoer, even me, to an indie film, I probably would. Let's say we watched 10 of them. Went to a movie festival together, you and I. We watched 10 movies. Probably 4 or 5 would hit with me. And the other ones, almost like Visions, where some would be like, I get what they're going for, but it doesn't really work for me. I have never sat in a 2.5-hour art film and never felt like leaving. I didn't feel like going. I didn't go pee.
Yeah.
I didn't stop staring at the screen. Like, I had no, like, okay. See, I've heard people say, like, oh, it's a little slow, it's a little boring. I thought it was so tense. So, like, because I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea what's going to happen, you know? So for me, as a new viewer, I'm like, I can't, it's not slow. Like, and maybe it's because I read fantasy books. And because you read fantasy books. And I'm like, well, no, this is like a fantasy. This is what you do in a fantasy book. You build. I mean, you don't
Exactly.
And that's the reward, right? It's the reward. And so, for an art film with a big budget, I think the mainstream appeal here is extremely high. And I think if you've ever read a fantasy book or a sci-fi book in your life, it's not going to be like slow to you. You're going to get it like, oh, we're doing world building here. Like this to me, it was laying breadcrumbs I wanted to follow. Mm-hmm. Well, who's that? What is that? What's going on here? What are they talking about here? Who's the emperor? You know, like, what is this? Well, I don't know what that is. Mm-hmm. That to me was all gold. Those are gold nuggets that now I need answers to. Mm-hmm. So I had to hit on those 2 points. Yeah, it did feel very indie, but indie in like the most, like, I don't want to look away. You know, sometimes indie movies, I think the stereotype is the director gets in their own head a little bit. Like, they're really
they're trying to be too artsy or too intelligent for their own sake, and you just see through the fakeness of it. And it's just
like, and you're like, okay, we get it. You're artsy, or your movie's weird, you know.
Yeah.
Like, Donnie Darko sticks out to me. Like, it's one of those cult classics where it's like, I've seen Donnie Darko. It's a fine movie. But, like, don't tell me it had to be that weird. You know, like, it could have been. But that's okay. It's all preference, right? Yeah. This movie to me is like, well, it's an indie film, but, like, I felt like every indie or art or painstaking choice made, like, was for the betterment of the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I just, you know, also one quality of the film that I want to add to is that, you know, me and my younger brother, we went to see it. Like yourself, him and his girlfriend, they didn't watch it. Or read the book or watch the original, and they went to see it. And after we saw the movie, they said, Ben, you know, I don't know if this movie is for everyone, but I was able to follow the story. I was not lost at all, right? And I told them that, look, there's this quality about this film. And he also said that I don't know if it's going to succeed financially. I don't know if it's going to be a moneymaker because there's a certain appeal, a niche appeal to this kind of movie that Marvel fans will be like, hey, where's the action? Where's the cool one-on-one scene with like cool shots when we see how the swords clash and sparks fly? Yeah. And I told them, Joe, hold on a second. What if fans are so becoming... Because look, even people who go and watch blockbuster movies, they're not stupid. In general, audience is not stupid. People know what they want. Sometimes they want to relax during a movie. Sometimes they want to be intellectually challenged. Sometimes they just want beautiful scenery. Who knows, right? But they're not stupid, and there will come a point where all these Hollywood blockbuster, The Force Awakens, supersonic pacing, J.J. Abrams kind of filmmaking will become tiresome for fans. And, you know, there will be an interest and demand for something more cerebral, something more nuanced. And I told them, well, hold on, Joe, don't discard this movie as a moneymaker just yet. Because look at the Joker film, right? It is also, in its regard... It's very much art cinema.
It is.
Right? And I don't believe for a second that it garnered over $1 billion in a budget, in a gross, you know, income, just on the hype machine alone. It was so much word of mouth, and people responded to something visceral, something that touched very uncomfortable subjects. It was so real in this like fake CGI polluted kind of like screen, right?
It was raw.
Right, it's raw. When you come into Dune, there's this beautiful aspect of the film where the director relies on the audience's intelligence to interpret the visuals of the film. Yeah. Because there is never it's definitely a quieter story than the Star Wars would be.
King of Cringe said, is it slow? Yes. Is it boring? Never.
No.
And there you go.
And why it's not boring is that every scene is filled with this, not with this fake art cinema, pardon my French, BS, where they're trying just to wave the magic stick and try, look, I have this creative film. There's a feeling and there's a goal and intent behind each scene. It's taking you somewhere. I felt like those 2.5 hours, I was lost in this world. And something to add to the musical score is that when that music kicks into high gears, I felt that too was a part of a storytelling. without spoiling the movie for you guys, there's one particular moment in the beginning of the film, right, where the young Paul Atreides responds to a very critical situation in a very prominent way. And when the music and the chorus kicks in that way, the music itself is telling you about this rising force, this rising power. It's like, oh my God, everything is working in concert so well, but none of it is spoon-fed. None of it is The Force Awakens. You know, remember that scene where the stormtrooper goes like this with Finn's helmet? It's like, I'm marked, I'm your friend, I'm dead right now. Look at all this blood. It was like so heavy-handed on the nose stuff. Dune is a complete exact opposite of it.
Very different movies. And this is what kind of got to me. Is I saw a lot of people before. We got a lot to talk about with Dune, honestly. We can go probably hours on Dune. We could do a whole shoot. Man. Yeah. You know, for me, you know, I saw people say, oh, I saw a tweet, and I should have, like, quoted it or liked it so I could look back on it. Someone was basically saying, like, you know, Dune doesn't really make sense or have a place in a post-Star Wars world. Like, Star Wars hits so many of the story beats, this was this person's opinion, of Dune, and does it in a lot more accessible way, a lot more audience-friendly way. Where is Dune's home? And this was why a lot of people basically forecasted to not do well at the theater, which is like, look, the general audience is not into art sci-fi. You know, Prometheus is an example of a sci-fi movie where it's like, you're going to get mixed reactions because it's, you know, it's weird. You know, it's just weird, right? It's a weird movie. I like Prometheus a lot.
It's a little fake. It's what we talked about earlier. It tries to be more than it is.
Agreed. Well, it gets worse with Alien.
Oh my God, Covenant.
Covenant, thank you. Oh, I mean, that kind of ruined it. I like Prometheus a lot. I thought the score in Prometheus was really good. Yeah. And the theater experience to me is a huge deal.
Yeah.
And so when people say, like, well, this movie doesn't have like a purpose, like this movie from a theater viewing perspective, like I'm gonna go see it again this weekend, and that means it's earned my money twice, and it takes a special kind of movie to do that.
Agreed.
The story it wants to tell, you know, for someone who doesn't know where it's going. I mean, I can guess where it's going, or I can assume. I don't know, and I'm not going to find out because I don't want to know at this point. You know, for me, I'm so intrigued though. Like, I had to get a sequel. Like, if you watch a movie and you're like, you know, it was good. I mean, if I don't get a sequel, it's all right. You know, it's okay. Like, I'm fine with that. Like, it's kind of, you know, okay, that was good.
It touched you.
Yeah, it was good. Like, this, I was like, man, if I don't get a sequel, it's going to be really depressing. Like, I'm going to be, you know, it's going to be like release the Snyder Cut. It's going to be like release the Snyder Cut up in here, you know? Right. You know, release it. And I think that's such a testament to a well-made movie. You took someone who had no connection to your property. And to be quite honest with you, there was a lot of reasons for me not to like it. So, you know, you have a property like Dune, which is not the Star Wars or the DC worlds that I love, right? They're not the two worlds that I'm most invested in. This is some other third-party IP, a different group, right? So I don't, you know, I don't want
something entirely new for you, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
Right?
So it wasn't like I had a skin in the game. It wasn't like, oh, I need Dune to be good. You know, it's like, Dune's not my area. You know, if Dune's good, good. I thought it was phenomenal. I mean, seriously, I don't want to overhype it because then I set expectations for viewers that maybe it can't meet for them.
It's definitely, I think I was happy with the fact that they say it is part one. Again, I don't think it's a spoiler.
It's the first scene.
Right, they show you in the opening like credit of the movie. They show you this is part one. And when haven't heard this what you just mentioned, that some fans say that in a post-Star Wars world it doesn't have a place. I would feel exactly the opposite because I would want for all the future Star Wars projects to aspire to this. Because honestly, this movie I like more than any Disney era Star Wars content or the Star Wars prequels because it accomplishes something that none of those movies could do for me. Even as much as I love The Last Jedi and all the parts with Luke, you know, I want a movie that is just, it doesn't spoon feed you. It has this emotional component, emotional core that is not diluted by all the spectacle. It's not diluted by all the grand, you know, CGI and action sequences and huge marketing campaign. It's, in a way, Dune was like a quiet making of the grand film. Everybody knows how big the book is, right? Everybody's raving about it. It's one of the most influential science fiction books in American literature. But the making of it was like, no, we're going to make something that will blow you away. You know, he approached it so humbly. Denis Villeneuve, he said, let me just make it. It's such a, I'm so humbled by making this movie because, guys, for those of you who don't know, there's a rich history of trying to make the proper version of this movie. And there's this Spanish filmmaker, Jodorowsky, who was making, and there's a pre-production of the version of Dune that was never completed. They had this epic production score. He hired all the most renowned filmmakers in the world. He even hired Pablo Picasso for 1 hour in this film that he would pay him $100,000 for that 1 hour just to star in that movie. That's how crazy he was with his ideas and, just the huge epicness of it. It flopped. It didn't go anywhere. Here, once again, everybody, oh my God, what is he going to do? And I felt like he didn't oversell the movie because fans didn't have anything to speculate about. It just came out of nowhere. It's like, yes, we're making Dune. Here's a trailer. We know you're excited. Boom, here's the movie. Enjoy it.
So is it, I mean, the question on my mind, for a new fan to the world, I've heard the book is very, is not like the most digestible book at first read. I've never read it. I've just heard people say like it's kind of a slow book. It's kind of a weird book. It's kind of complicated. Like, you got to kind of figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. What are these houses? What are they talking about? Yeah. Now I read a lot of fantasy, as you guys know. Huge fan of the Stormlight Archives, which I think is pretty graspable fantasy, but a commitment. I mean, 4 books, 40 hours plus each. I mean, you're talking 200 hours, of a series. Maybe I've gotten more accustomed, so it didn't, I'm more used to letting the world grow and burn, etc. And there were things in Dune that I've seen other places. For example, in the Wheel of Time, which we're getting a Netflix show coming out Amazon Prime show that's coming out in November. Mm-hmm. Wheel of Time has an all-female group of users who can use a certain ability that men can't, right? So the Aes Sedai can use magic, the one power. Men could not, okay? If you are a man who can use it, it's a very rare thing and a bad thing at that. And this secret group, this group of Aes Sedai has great influence on leaders. And they also have their own schemes all the time, right? Reminds me a lot of things from Dune, right? Like, so I was immediately comfortable with that group of characters. I was like, oh, I know exactly. I have a point of reference for you. Like, I know what to expect. So that's where I wonder, like, well, maybe because I know fantasy, I know sci-fi, like these kind of character tropes or character ideas aren't like, what is that? I've never, so maybe I didn't think it was overwhelmingly ungraspable. I understood there were great houses. I mean, I'm going to say Game of Thrones. I know it sounds really tropey. People are like, oh, it's Game of Thrones. I don't want to say everything's like Game of Thrones. But there is a very, and this to me might be too spoilery, so I'm not going to say it on this episode, maybe in a future episode. There is a character arc in the story that is very similar to what George R.R. Martin did in an early, in one of the early Game of Thrones books. There's one character, I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about if you see it. Like, I'm sure he was inspired by Dune or stories like it in the genre. There's, those kind of moments. It felt far different than Star Wars, and I had been led to believe that they were lined up a lot. Like, Desert Planet, there's like a Chosen One thing going on too. It's gonna, I guess it was Star Wars-esque in the sense that they're both sci-fi. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't think it was very close to Star Wars at all. As far as big picture to me, the similarities are more minor. Yeah. But to you, who's read the book, you got to tell me, how does it stack up? I mean, how did you like the book? Is this better than the book? Is it worse than the book? Or is it meeting expectations?
I couldn't have asked for a better adaptation, honestly. I think it's one of the most faithful book to film adaptation, which still presents the filmmaker's unique voice and interpretation. Honestly, it's just maybe that I'm an artist, right? I create things. I'm a graphic designer. When I read books, the reason that I enjoy books over any other form of entertainment is that I visualize a lot of what's happening in the book. And it's just that Denis Villeneuve's vision of this universe is very much aligned with how I saw it. It also has to do with constantly looking at imagery and art that came out through the years. The book came out in the 60s, right? But anyway, I thought that aside from a few things, which he made a few concessions of making some scenes shorter, quicker, combining certain shots together or scenes together to make the plot movie, because it's a big movie. I mean, if he followed chapter for chapter, it would have been 5 movies perhaps. It's really big book.
Or a show, multiple seasons.
Right. But But what I also really, really enjoyed, not only was it faithful, is that he consistently held my attention in the moment. Meaning that if there's this scene happening and something is very important he wants to relate to you, he doesn't rush to the other part of the story. He stays here, he moves on. And the interesting quality about the book is that, at least my interpretation of it was, so I started reading it last year. I read about 30% of it and I stopped. Not because it wasn't good or slow or boring. I just have that tendency to do that. I do that with video games. I abandon them halfway. I do it with shows, and then I come back to it. When I came back to it the second time, and yes, the first time watching, I'm sorry, I lied. It did feel a little bit slow, but not the kind of slow where like I am bored. It was like, wow, it's just, there's a lot of meat here. There's a lot of stuff to digest, but I like that kind of stuff because it's visceral. It doesn't play around with my mind or with my intelligence. Like, oh, I'm going to take you on a plot. There's like one writer that I can't stand is Neil Gaiman. I can't stand his writing because he always rickrolls you. He always leads you on this journey that he knows how to hold your attention. And at the end, there is no reward. It's about nothing. It's like Guy Ritchie of literature. With Frank Herbert, he said, first of all, there's a really cool documentary on YouTube where he talks about how he wrote this book, how he picked a language for the book, the prose style and structure and characters. He did 5-year research on geology, on different sciences, on human psychology and human condition, how people would evolve spiritually, spiritual organization in space in the future. He took all of that into account. And when you read the book, it's not overbearing, it's not complex, it's not convoluted plot-wise, it's just layered. I think that's the best word to describe it. There's layer beneath layer beneath layer, but all of it felt accessible enough. Just like the movies, when you go and see it, I even asked my brother's girlfriend, right, Angela. And Angela is, 5 years in the country. She's came from South America. Her English is very, very admirable. But obviously it's not on the same level like mine, where I've been in the country for 25 years, right? Nuance and science fiction terminology. And when we came out of the movie theater, I just asked her, to answer your question, I asked both Joe and Angela, I said, were you guys like at all confused by the plot? Because like all these factions and characters and different tensions going on, or did you get what was happening? Yeah. And she was telling me exactly what the author intended with the book. I'm like, okay. So the movie came across very, very clear.
It got the message across. And you have to make, because I saw a couple things from chat that stuck out to me. So to King of Cringe, yes, Stormlight Archives, I am a fan. It is my favorite book series right now at this moment. I recommend it on my channel a lot, especially on this live stream. If you guys are looking for a new fantasy series while you're waiting for the High Republic to come out, well, you're not going to be able to read all the Stormlight Archives before January, but it is a great series. I highly recommend Stormlight Archives. It is up to 4 books now, with the 5th book coming out in the next couple of years. Start with Way of Kings. It is phenomenal. Favorite book series right now. I want to point out Giafet said he likes Neil Gaiman. So
I can't stand him, man.
Okay, so remind me, did Neil Gaiman do Sandman?
Yeah, he did the Sandman comic books.
And he did American Gods, didn't he?
Yeah, American Gods. All that
kind of artsy-ish. Always feels like there's a big message behind it, but you don't really.
Look, he is an expert storytelling. I just don't like his ideologies. I don't like Guy Ritchie for that same matter. He makes amazing pornography-level, beautiful, like 2-hour movies about nothing. It's like action porn. It's amazing visually, but I'm like, I'm bored.
At the end of the day, for me, and I won't say much more, I'll give some fans time to watch it. It's only been a week. It's so funny. And we live in a culture where it's like a week is like forever. It's like, oh man, Dune came out years ago. It's like it was like 5 days ago. Yeah. I think it's phenomenal, and I don't say that about a lot of movies. I think you brought up Joker earlier, which is actually a great comparison. Not because the movies are similar at all, but because in both of those theater experiences, I was so absorbed. Yeah. I remember the tension in the Joker theater. Like, it was a tense theater, and that score was phenomenal. And
can I ask you a specific question in relationship to both Dune and Joker? And obviously you can speak more to Joker because we don't want to spoil the Dune. When did you know, what was like the specific moment or a scene that you knew that this movie hooked you?
The bathroom scene in the Joker.
Bathroom scene?
I'll tell you why it was the bathroom scene. I was already, you guys know I'm a huge DC fan. DC and Star Wars are like my 2 properties. And then Stormlight Archives has been a series I've been really passionate about. But, those are my 2 pop culture fandoms. So I wanted to like Joker, right? I go into those movies wanting to like them. They're my characters, right? I want to see them. And the first scene that came to my head when you said that was the bathroom scene. And I think it's because like when you're watching that scene, in almost any other context, you'd be like, "What the heck am I watching? This is silly. It's goofy. Like, what is he doing?"
Yeah.
But the movie somehow made me like get goosebumps in that scene. You know, the score, the kind of weird, nuanced beautifulness to it was like, this is kind of wild, but I'm in. You know what I mean? Like I'm in, because under most context, a scene like that would be like, what the heck am I? You know, what am I watching? This is a comic book movie. You know, and it's like some guys dancing in the bathroom after murdering some people. And it was, to me, like, if you can sell me on that, if you can hook me on a scene like that, like, I know I'm on something really special here. And I think that sticks out. There's a lot of other great scenes in that movie. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's the best scene. Yeah. But that was the moment that I was like, this is something different that is totally unique to anything I've experienced before, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You know which scene it was for me? It's first of all, I am a Joaquin Phoenix fan, right? I enjoy his acting.
Pretty darn
and
good.
I didn't see it first when it came out in theaters, and my brother saw it. He's like, Ben, pick up your butt. We're going to theater. We're watching this movie. I'm like, what? It's this good? No, like, no, you don't understand. You need to see it.
Yeah.
He wasn't even like hyping it. Like, you need to see it because he studied film. And we went to see it, and the first opening scene where he's in the dressing room, he goes in, he stares at that mirror. And once again, this is where the movie demonstrates that storytelling craft is an art form. You either have it or you don't. You can make a 2-hour Rogue One kind of movie, which is like action scene to action scene to action. That's my personal feeling. And then you make Joker when it's just the first scene and you don't know anything about this character. You know how people talk about character development. You need to build up a movie so you start caring about this character. I just met him and he's sitting there. He's staring at the mirror and he starts doing this. Yeah. He's like, you see that torment and pain in his eyes. I'm like, what is happening right here? I am so sold. I want to know this Joker. I want to know what's happening in his world. Why is the person feeling this way? A gazillion questions. Immense amount of setup just in one opening scene of the movie. I'm like, I can't believe it. Mastery.
You know, for Dune, you know, it will have to wait because I do want to give people a chance to see it. I would recommend, and I understand everyone has different financial and comfort levels and all that. If you can go to the theater, I'd highly recommend it because I don't think it will be as good at home.
Yeah.
I really don't.
It demands the big screen.
I think it's a movie that will miss, and I think a lot of people who think the movie's boring probably watched it at home. You probably watched it at home, you know, turned it on the normal TV and, let me check my phone and, look up. And, you know, because I know people who, so my sister saw it and did not like the movie. You know, she didn't. And everyone's entitled to their own opinion, right? You know, she was like, nah, I just didn't feel like anything really happened. Like, I didn't feel like I was watching anything. You know, I couldn't disagree more. I do kind of wonder, she watched it at home, I went to the theater. And I feel like when you're in a theater, your attention is fully there. And you're really getting hit with that score and with the kind of scale of it. I think that absorbs you in a way that the home TV can't. Or watching it on your iPad at night, you know, on HBO Max. And if that's the only way you can watch it, I'd still watch it. But I think it's like Jay Chard said he watched it on HBO Max and he still loved it. You know, so it's going to be totally up to you and whatever works. But to me, I really liked the theater. I thought it was really a fun time.
So you can't bring, like, even in very vague terms, what was something about the Dune that hooked you?
I think for me, with Dune, what was the thing that sold me the most? I think it was probably... So there's a scene, I'll just use vagaries. There's a scene where you meet a certain faction of warriors. Mm-hmm. And it's on a rainy planet. Mm-hmm. And they're going through like a pre-game ritual, a pre-battle ritual. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And it's got
that is also in the trailer. It's not really.
It's got this weird. Well, there were some details in there I didn't catch in the trailer.
Okay, yeah.
It's got this weird, I'll just say, language that happens, and this weird kind of thing going on.
Chanting, right?
Yeah, and this just some very out of this. But like when you see that, you're like, what is going on here? You know, like what is the background of these people? What are they doing? Yeah. Why are that going on up there? What is this language? Like, I got to get all these questions answered. Like, I need to know these answers. I think that scene sticks out to me as like such a perfect encapsulation of like, man, this stuff's wild. I got to learn more. I think the other thing about what other scene really stuck out to me, I'm trying to think early in the film what thing kind of grabbed me first. I do love when the I forget what the term they use when they summon House Atreides, like the costume design of the entourage, I guess I'll call them, right, or whatever. Like I don't know, like you can feel the tension building, like the kind of excitement.
I thought of
like,
prequels, Josh.
I
thought of you.
Yeah,
dude, I thought of you as I'm watching it in theaters. I'm like, oh man, Josh is gonna love it because costume-wise and set-wise, I'm like, I can't help but like connect visually to the prequels because they were so rich in costumes.
There's an underlining darkness to Dune that I love in a movie. Like this, I said tension, and there's kind of like this kind of, I don't want to say dread, but there's almost like this ominousness to it, this eeriness to it.
Yeah.
Which I think is very prevalent in Revenge of the Sith, and also in
a good comparison.
In the Clone Wars season 7, where she's confronting them all, and there's this kind of like impending doom. I felt that a lot in Dune, and I love. It sounds weird, but I love that feeling in movies. I love that tension, like what's gonna happen. That to me, that's the best kind of. It's the best kind of way to make your audience feel like I care for these characters. I don't want anything to happen to them. I've known them for 30 minutes. I you know what I mean? Like there were characters in here. I think the acting was phenomenal too. We didn't really talk about them a lot, but the acting.
Everything
was really
is just
good.
top tier.
That's
but it's. You brought up Revenge of the Sith. Remember that scene where Anakin goes to the temple, obviously to kill all the younglings, and they show that from the top shot of the dark temple, he's walking in.
Good stuff.
That scene, like visually, in terms of like color scheme and lighting, it belongs in Dune. So I completely see the parallel here because it's the darkest film out of the prequel trilogy, and there's a lot of they show Coruscant at night, they show the descending sun, they show you things are going generally bad, right?
Yeah.
A lot of parallels with Dune as well.
I agree. Guys, you got to see it, I think. Let me ask you, you read the books, so you kind of already, you probably were already into the world.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the highlight of the movie? With as spoiler as you can be, what sticks out to you is like, man, they really nailed this. They hit
that one scene that hooked me in. I'm gonna come clean, guys. Okay, I'm gonna make a confession. I was a little bit impatient. I went to see this movie, right? I kept my expectations very, very reserved. I'm like, okay, I love The Arrival. Let's just see what he does here. Yeah. Not every movie is a success, even from a successful filmmaker. I'm like, okay. The first 5 or 10 minutes of the film are meant for new audience.
Yes.
They are meant to introduce people to this universe so you can have a pleasurable experience, especially announcing the fact that they're like, hey, guys, this is basically like Kill Bill. You're not getting the full picture. You're getting half of the movie.
You are, yeah.
Right? And I was a little bit annoyed at that. Not because it didn't have place in there, not because, it was poorly made. I was just like, dude, where's my Dune? Move this stuff aside. Yeah. The moment that it stops doing that, the little setup, and maybe like 5 minutes into it, and we see Paul Atreides for the first time, the movie like switches gears. Like, all right, are you ready? You ready to take this journey? We're in. And like the moment it doesn't, it's almost like you're taking a dive in the pool, and the hit water just, hits you. That's how it felt. Like, oh, this is a real movie. And from that moment forward until the end, it didn't stop taking me on this journey. But the moment, the absolute highlight of the film, which I sort of still anticipated towards the last part of the movie, kind of like a climax of part 1, it didn't happen. It was the beginning of the film where the scene where, again, our young hero is experiencing something visceral, and his response to it, and the conjunction of imagery and sound together, and then how he's like, where his acting starts in that shot and where it ends, I'm like, I was in awe. I was literally like, I don't want this movie to stop. It needs to go on forever.
Yeah, it was funny. The opening scene I actually liked, where they kind of told me what was going on, because I was way off of what I thought the story was about. Because I watched the first trailer. Yeah, so I saw the first trailer, and I'll tell you what I thought it was. I don't think it's a spoiler.
I would love to hear that.
So when I saw the trailer, here was my thought. I was thinking, okay, there's this planet, this sand planet, right? Arrakis. I didn't even know what it was called. I heard of the trailer Arrakis. So, okay, let's say there's this sand planet called Arrakis. Looks like, Tatooine. It looks like this race of all pale people wearing black armor have enslaved this planet. And there's this other like group out there, this other like race of people who are called Atreides, House Atreides, and they're kind of like protectors of justice in space.
Yeah.
And so that entourage is like a group of people from the Sand Planet who are requesting help. Like, hey, these people are enslaving us. We need help. Because in the trailer, he says, there is no call we don't answer, no religion we turn down, no faith.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so like they're kind of like, hey, we help everyone. If you come to us, you partition our help, we'll come deliver justice. Like, so I'm thinking like, okay, it's this planet that's at war, and they're bringing in House Atreides as like backup. They're gonna help and fight this war together. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
And it is not that. I mean, there are pieces that are kind of, but it's not that. And when I immediately found out it was different, I was like, oh, okay, this is way different than I thought. Like, I did not realize. Well, I don't even want to say it because, like, let's just. I'll wait because
everyone dies, guys. Okay, so.
There was something about the universe that I didn't even understand. Like, they were like, oh, this exists. And I was like, I didn't get that from the trailer, you know, which is a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing. But I literally thought it was like, okay, well, there's like these bad guys who are pale and weird, and they're enslaving the Sand Planet, and the, Blue Planet with Paul are coming to save the Sand Planet. And that's not what it is. I mean,
you know, it's funny. I think it's also noteworthy to mention that even after me like finishing the first book, obviously, just a reminder for our audience who are watching this, that Frank Herbert wrote the first 6 books, and the rest are continued by his son, and then later on by his son and one of the Star Wars alumni author, Kevin J. Anderson, who wrote some of the best Star Wars books, in my opinion. So there's like 20 plus books. And it's obviously getting something to akin of like a Star Wars world. Obviously, the first book is like a tip of the iceberg. When I finished reading the first book, I'm like, even the entire first book felt just like a setup. It wasn't an instance where let me just write the first book and see how it fares. In case of, when you look at the Star Wars Episode 4, the story is complete. It feels like, okay, the good guys defeated the face of the Empire by defeating the Death Star. It kind of gives you a logical conclusion that the good guys are going to win. In case of Dune, when you finish reading it, you know the author's intent, like, here is a setup, here's this rich universe, let me see if I can tell more stories in there. I'm like, okay. So I would tell the audience, the fans who are going to go see this movie, and even after finishing part 2, is that don't be afraid like to go and jump into books, because there's going to be so much to discover.
They don't cover. One thing I will end it on, as we'll wrap it up here today before, we give it a week to talk more Dune. There was this comment today from the director, Denis Villeneuve, who said he also wants to adapt Dune Messiah, which is the second book, right? I think. Is it not? Regardless, he envisioned 3 movies, right? That was kind of his thought on the franchise. Will he get 3 movies? I don't know. Because financially, studios want to make money, and they will cancel anything that they don't feel is making money. I mean, it's just an unfortunate truth.
Even from established directors.
Especially if it's not making money, they don't care if you're Michael Bay. That's why Michael Bay has got 1 million movies, all right? He's making money. They don't care what you think of him. You go to the theaters. I would say, guys, go support Dune. There's not a lot of movies like it, and I would like it to do well at the box office. But understand that you guys have, of course, don't blow your money for food to go see Dune. But if you have an opportunity, go see Dune and get ready for Dune Part 2, because it's going to be, I think, something that should be made and should be celebrated. I think we should get more projects like this.
Yeah.
Just my opinion. Well, let's go and take ourselves back to the main screen and start to close here. So let me ask you, Timeline, as you're going into your next week, what's going on your channel? What's going on in Star Wars? What are you reading? What are you researching?
I've kind of stopped doing my shorts, and I just pumped one out today about the TX-180 tank, and I want to go back to it because those are kind of fun to do. It's like, again, it's a little bit of a emotional bummer. Like, you're looking at your videos, it's like they're not even reaching 100 views, which I was able to top over that, obviously, with my previous videos. But, like, again, you also know as an adult it's a grind. You gotta, kick butt and just do it. So there's that, and then I gotta tell myself to just stop being lazy. And, like, even before I finish the X-Wing book, I will probably go and check out one of the newer stuff, because I feel like it's becoming a little bit overwhelming with the new stuff. I'm being like a little over inundated with like the Ronin, the High Republic stuff. I want to catch up on this so you and I can have a conversation about this. But in general, like also catch up with video games. I still have not beat on Force Unleashed 1 and 2. Really? That's how, and I had them originally when it came out on PS4.
Oh gosh.
I gotta stop doing that. It's like, just go back to it and watch it. Yeah.
I do that too with video games. You start, not finish, and like games I like, it almost feels like I'll always get busy. Like, a perfect one is like Last of Us, the first one. I really like Last of Us, and it's like I just never finished it. I don't know why. It's like stuff came up, and I never beat it. It happens. But.
Yeah, and I also wanted to invite you over. Let's pick a day when you're free.
Yeah.
To have you back on my podcast. Because
yeah.
Some of the funnest stuff that I have is talking about, Star Wars with you, because we are similar, but then we're not. You know what I wanted to do, a topic for a while, I can't believe I didn't do yet? Just compare movies versus cinema, because like it feels like we're shifting gears. It's like we're getting more and more of television format of Star Wars.
We are.
And there's nothing on the horizon about Star Wars movies, right? That's what
except for Rogue Squadron, right? With
which is
Patty
like
Jenkins,
far away behind the hills somewhere. It's like
and Taika Waititi is getting a Star Wars movie as well.
Yeah, and supposedly Rian Johnson stuff is still on the table.
Trilogy,
I hope it's still happening, but it's just I think it'll be an interesting talk. I wanted to pick your brain. It's like, how will the fandom shift in that way too? Because it's like, if we can deliver a season that's not up to snuff and then kind of like steer the course in season 2 and fans like it more, how is it going to have like change the paradigm shift? Are the fans going to be still as like noisy and like, we don't like this, or fans are going to be like, well, more tempered, like, well, I didn't like this season, let me see what happens in season 2.
Expectations for shows is just different.
They are.
I'll be honest with you, like I thought, so we'll use Marvel, right? The other Disney. Yeah. So Marvel's had 4 shows. They had WandaVision, which I thought started really well. I thought the ending was very disappointing. All my opinion. I thought Loki was really solid throughout. Some things I would have changed, but solid. Solid. Not a lot of complaints. I thought the Captain America, so Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I thought was bad. I thought
really?
It was bad. And I'm a big Captain America fan. Still, I mean. You know what it felt like to me? And again, it's all pro. It felt like Marvel's best movie, which was, one of their best movies, which was Winter Soldier. I think Winter Soldier is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It felt like that they tried to do that, but just did not have as interesting of an idea to me. I felt like the villain, the flow, it just didn't work for me. It just didn't. And then you had What If, which I have yet to finish. I started it. I want to keep going, but it didn't hook me the way Visions or Bad Batch did. Excuse me. But you know what's funny? I think overall I'd argue it's been a lot of ups and downs for Marvel TV. But do you see any real backlash? I think fans have a different expectation for shows. I really do. I think if you do a Star Wars show and it's like, meh, I think the blowback is much smaller than if you do a movie. There's something about a movie versus a show that just has different standards. Even today.
Yeah, and it also has to do probably with, when you are having a numbered sequel trilogy, playing around with the most close to heart, heroes like Luke. Yeah. That's probably part of it. It's not just the format, it's who's involved. That's why I'll be very interested to see, we're taking Anakin from live action, right? The numbered prequels, we're putting him in the show. How is that going to translate?
You make a great point. A lot of the problems the movies have dealt with is because they connected to characters who are already existing, that people loved and had expectations of and ideas of. And I'm a Disney shill, right? Big Disney shill here. We can all acknowledge that the planning behind the sequel trilogy was bad, right? It was not well executed from a planning perspective. Yeah. It had so many opportunities to take their time and build it, and it felt like they wanted to do 3 unique directors, 3 unique visions, and then like the minute they actually dealt with that, they were like, well, I mean, we're not really going to do that. Let's just, the second guy did something we didn't like, canned him, let's bring the first guy back, and he'll try to scramble together. So at the end of the day, I think, we are seeing, you're dead on, Star Wars is shifting to TV. It's shifting to TV and streaming. It's shifting to streaming shows. That's the new home of Star Wars. And I will say, I'm here for it. For now, I'm here for it. It's new. It's different. It feels different, which I think is a good thing for Star Wars. Yeah. And let's see those movies. You know, Rogue Squadron became a lot more of an unknown after Wonder Woman 84. Mm-hmm. I think Wonder Woman was phenomenal. The original Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
I think Wonder Woman 1984 was not good. Not terrible, but not as good. And Patty Jenkins wrote 84. Yeah. And so people, I think, got a little scared. I'm not. I think it's still going to be good. I think Patty Jenkins to me has a real understanding of the heart of a character, like the fun kind of freeness. And so a story like Rogue Squadron that's going to be, you know, I think could lend itself to that. I think she'll do a fine job. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, it just proves the case that a director alone does not make the movie. I will never accept the fact that George Lucas is the sole custodian of Star Wars. He did not create it on his own. Even the prequels that was created under his very, very strict leadership, there's people involved. There's people that make suggestions, that put input. They alter scenes, right? They alter the vibe, the mood of the film. It's a process. And, you know, and when a director fails, like in my eyes, you know, and in the eyes of many original fans, when George Lucas failed with prequels, you shouldn't crucify him for that. You should say, like, oh, you know, this is unfortunate. It didn't come out the way, you know, we wanted it. Big deal. Give the guy another chance. Imagine George Lucas today still helming it and still being excited about it and trying to reinvigorate it. Imagine him just taking a back seat and like, Filoni, you do this, you know, you do that. And that kind of happened. What Fandom Menace is fantasizing about today and their alternate reality, they're like basically casting Kathleen Kennedy away and they're rehiring George Lucas. Well, that would have been the case if you, the guys who grew up with prequels, wouldn't hate on Star Wars so much, you know?
Well, at the end of the day, he got run off Star Wars, right?
Yeah. By fans.
He did, by
us,
fans.
By all of us.
Because he lost the... Man, imagine putting your heart and soul into something and just getting, like, ripped. You know? It's like, okay, like, that was my dream, and people hated me for it and treated me like dirt. And that's one thing we've talked about a lot on this channel. One of the reasons I defend Star Wars so much, even though they've had a lot of things that have missed for me. Like, I'm not a sequel trilogy fan at, like, really at all. I don't come on here talking about them. There's a lot of people put their blood, sweat, and tears in those movies and performances. And, you know, we rip them and insult them like they got no feelings because we don't like what they did. And I think that can be dangerous. But, hey, you know what? Onward and upward. Let's see what's next. It's funny. I'm just looking over on Twitter and, you know, they my trending tab, which is typically related to your account activity, I see Light of the Jedi trending. And it's because there were some threads about what's your favorite Star Wars book. And Light of the Jedi is on so many of those lists, like top 10. I think Light of the Jedi was a really good read. It just kind of reminded me of that, of all the stories we've got in the High Republic. I think it was one of the strongest so far.
You and I are both excited to be fans today. This is the time.
That's exactly right. Well, guys, thanks for coming by Thursday night. We enjoyed. Hey, we talked about Hayden Christensen. We talked about Dune. You know, it was a good time. And more... Tomorrow, you know, they're going to break some crazy news, and we're going to have to come back next week and talk about it, too.
That's right. Star Wars game is about to be announced.
That's right.
Tease with the... Have you seen that Battlefront 2 little tease?
Yeah. And
let's see what happens next week.
And I think there's a Disney event, a Disney, like, D+ event coming out where we're going to get some Book of Boba Fett stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. A show I'm very excited for. Very excited for. Well, thanks, guys, for stopping by. We appreciate it. We'll be back again next week. Make sure you check out both the channels. Reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook, in Ben's case. Anything you guys have or questions for us, let us know. Until next time, guys, it's been a lot of fun.